Welcome to Buried Talent, the show for young professionals that tears down false beliefs about faith and work so you can unbury your God given talent right where you are. I'm Patrick Lowndes, and today we're going to be talking about scattershot development, 6 traps keeping high potential Christians stuck in 2026. Now, if you're hearing this and you're listening to several of our episodes here, you're subscribed to the show, you know that you need to develop yourself. If you're a Christian, a young professional, even deeper in you might say an experienced professional. But if you're striving to grow more like Christ and also to build your skill set, your talent, you might feel some anxiety about all the options in the market, about whether or not what you're doing is actually working. There's money involved in developing yourself. There's lots of questions that come up when you talk about developing yourself and this scattershot development that we're going to hit on today. But I just want to call out, as I was doing my pre-show research, the Gen Z versus Millennials have an interesting view of investing in themselves. So here's 3 statistics to kick us off today. Stat number 1 is over 68% of Gen Z report attending or planning to attend professional development or therapy for mental health. Again, 68%. You've normalized seeking expert help, and other generations haven't. Stat number 2, you, Gen Z, you're prioritizing impact. There's a study that said 77% of Gen Z prioritize purpose over pay when choosing a role, which means you're willing to invest in alignment and doing something not that just pays the bills, but something that matters. And stat number 3, you're also practical. Gen Z, 70% of Gen Z are actively developing skills, oftentimes favoring targeted training, certifications over slow traditional development, which might be like, well, you're going to get development, you're going to, do on-the-job training for the next 5 years or 10 years. You're kind of, you don't want to take that approach and be stuck with that. So today, we're going to look at what do a lot of young professionals do, and I've tried to break it down into 6 areas. We call them traps that I would say keeps high potential Christian professionals stuck. And we're also going to talk about some of your attempts to get out of those, and statistically how they are often going to fail or you'll struggle at best. So let's think about this together, and we'll just go one by one. So number 1, we're going to start with kind of the big ones around direction and purpose or calling. Okay. And this is where your faith meets your career. So trap number 1 is the alignment doubt. Okay. I have a degree. I've got the job title that I wanted to get into. Maybe you're a couple jobs in on the career path that you're thinking you want to be on, but you have no clear faith-driven framework to confirm that this role is a good fit or that you're bringing the right value to this company, or you think that, man, somehow this role is a right step towards my ultimate purpose. So you might be feeling a little bit unsure, or maybe even guilty of like, maybe I just took a great offer, but now I'm questioning my alignment with, is this actually a good step on the path to where God wants me to grow? And so usually what we end up doing is we kind of just buy some more self-help books. We might listen to some vocational calling podcasts. You might be listening to this one and thinking this yourself right now. Or maybe I'll just spend more time praying about purpose. Which, by the way, it's good to get more insight. It's good to get more purpose, but eventually, I think you're hoping that you're going to get clarity through osmosis. And check out this data point: there's like $350 million a year spent on self-help books, but studies show that 3% of readers, like reading a self-help book, finish a personal development book and implement lasting change. And doing that outside of having a structured way to do that, right? So 3%. So information is not really transformation. All right, trap number 2, the impact gap. Okay, so maybe you have a vision for global impact, or a vision for maybe a product or a type of company that you envision helping build one day. And you have this vision for it, but again, you don't really have a concrete plan of how you're going to get from, hey, I'm in my first job, my second job, to how am I going to move towards the impact that I want to have. We talk a lot on college campuses with students who I ask them that question: what are you thinking maybe 3-5 years out, maybe even like 10 years out? Where do you see yourself? What does your job look like? What is the impact you're making? And some students do have a good answer, like, I think I'm going to be doing this. And then I say, cool, well, what happens between graduation and that in 10 years? And usually it's a lot of, I'm not quite sure, right? It's this impact gap. What are the steps to get there? And so usually the way that many times, if you're a professional listening to this, you're in your, again, first couple jobs here, you're thinking, well, maybe I'll just work a little bit harder on this job and try to make it fit, square peg into the round hole of the thing that I think I'm supposed to be doing. I know I've fallen into that. I've taken a job and like, oh, I want to do this and try to make it accomplish what I want to do. Also, there's like side projects and volunteer roles. So sometimes that's a great way to test out ideas and hypotheses on the side of your day job. But if that's just, again, kind of unstructured, many times we lose steam, we get distracted, and that effort that we put on the side of the day job is not always driving us toward the place where we feel like we can make a high impact. And so here's the data point that 70% of high performers feel dissatisfied when they lack a clear connection between their daily tasks and a long-term strategic mission. Okay. And so that usually means is like, I've got my job, I'm working hard, but I'm not really sure that the mission of this company, like that I'm really making an impact on that. This happens a lot when you get to kind of mid-size or large companies and you're like, I'm just a cog in the wheel. If you're at a smaller company, you might directly see how what you're doing affects that mission. But what's interesting though is like there's a gap many times, we call it the impact gap. That's number two. Number three, trap number three is the community void. Okay, so maybe again, you're in a job that you like, but you're struggling to find this group of peers, right? That is serious both about professional excellence and living out my faith authentically, right? And so I might feel a little bit isolated. This happens especially if you're more in an entrepreneurial circle or calling, but even if you're like, let's say, a software engineer or a finance group, right? I mean, if you're a software engineer, you might find like faith tech. If you're at a big company, you might try to find some of those communities that care about the craft that you're in, but also care about developing you in that craft and doing that in a way that honors Jesus and makes you more fruitful and faithful in that work, in that industry, right? So that's another big thing to focus on. And so a lot of people will start with, well, I'm at my church, I'm at a small group, and sometimes that community group, they just don't get you, right? You have things that you care about that are kind of big, and maybe, again, you might have this thing that you want to do that God's called you to do that just doesn't match up with what the, the 6 other people or families that you're hanging out with are. Now, I'm not saying don't be a part of that group. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is be a part of that group, but still, how are you developing yourself and the things that God is calling you that, again, the people, like, you can't expect your church to be all things to you in your development. They're going to be a critical part, right? Obviously, getting plugged in, committed, connected, and community, a ton of important part there. But the community gap you might be feeling is more of like, who are my comrades who care about the same thing that I care about, going in the same direction? And a lot of churches, especially the average size of a church today, 80 to 100 people in America, you're probably not going to find it. And so it's critical to think about, what are those new opportunities where you could find the community that is going in that same direction. So I already listed out a few examples of that. So that is number three, is that community gap. Let's talk about trap number 4 now. Now, this one here, I'm going to call it the structured access ceiling. You could almost call this trap like the networking gap as well, right? So this one is like, okay, I'm blocked out by some exclusive, maybe high-level networks. You all have probably seen examples of like networks where you have to like actually buy in and you pay a bunch of money. It's almost like a networking country club of some kind. But even just going to events, and conferences is a great way to meet people, but doing so is tricky. It's the average cost of an event, like going to a conference, if you have to fly somewhere and all the travel and expense, it's somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000 just to go and hang out. And you are like hoping that you're going to make all the connections, find all the people that you want to connect with. And if you're a hyper networker, you might feel like, no, I think I can pull that off. And that'd be cool. But a lot of us, when we're looking at how do I get access to a community of people that are like me, they're going the same direction, you might find that it's going to take you 3, 4, 5, 6 conferences. And before you know it, you're maybe 10, 10, 12 grand into this thing before you found a community that you're interested in. And not everyone's got 12 grand to spend and the time to go do that. But the point here is that what you want to do is think about, how can I find groups that I care about? How can I get to know them as much as I can, without maybe having to travel to them just yet? And then you can narrow down your selection towards an area that could be closer, and you're not feeling like there's a ceiling of how you can get in to those groups. That's also the place where you want to find mentors and people that are further down the path that could inspire you and encourage you. So that's number 4. Number 5, trap number 5, is the professional development dilemma. Now, a lot of you would say, "Hey, I'm already getting some on-the-job training, but I know that like getting some extra training, maybe a certification, maybe some kind of a outside of my maybe a professional coach. There's a lot of options out there, and quite frankly, like there's so much content today. I mean, you can spend everything from $30, $40 on a Udemy class to thousands on a mastermind peer group, depending on what you're looking at, right? But what's tricky is that a lot of those groups, while they might be really focused on one part of your profession, many times they also do not overlap and connect with, well, yeah, but how do I do that faithfully as a software engineer, or as a marketer, or as an accountant, or as an impact investor? So it's tricky, because if you want to develop yourself, usually you find yourself doing what? Spending $2,000 to go to a conference. And it's not bad to do that. But what's tricky is, if I'm relying on those big conferences, then you're expecting to make a big investment and then figuring out, okay, which one of these conferences is going to be the place where I'm getting that for 2 days, but what do I do the other 363 days of the year? Right? That becomes the challenge, is how do I follow up after that? And you've probably heard the stat that when you go and hear a bunch of talks, like 30 days later, only 5% of the information that you heard is actually retained and used, right? So that is tricky. So again, thinking about, how can I have a regular input of all of the things that I care about, the things that are going to professionally develop my skill set. That's hard to do. And so that's one of the things we bring up, is there's a lot of money spent on professional development. And then there's a lot of free stuff on the discipleship side in churches and communities, and even faith and work fellowships. There's fellowships all over the country that are like a faith and work a Bible study on steroids, and they're really great for discipling and forming you with the theology of work. But there's no professional development usually, and so it's tricky to try to find the marriage of those things. And that brings us to our last spot, our last trap, which is trap number 6, the accountability blind spot. Okay, that's the last one. So imagine, let's say you did find a professional development group, or you did find a conference, or you did find some of those communities, but then it was all kind of flash in the pan event based. So I go and grab one of those events. Now what do I do? This was me. I mean, I actually formed a lot of what we do with the Pragma Advisor stuff, and ultimately the Frontier Operators work, because I realized, man, going to conferences is not cutting it. I have that kind of flash in the pan, and then usually 2-3 weeks, a month or two after the conference, is like, man, a lot of that goes away. I lose the relationship. And so it's tricky to try to have accountability to grow. Now, some of you have invested in coaching or mentoring, where a goal setting and accountability against those goals is a normal part of it. And if you've done that, I mean, you have to invest in that, right? And that's usually somewhere between $100 and $200 a month. Depending on how much. If it's one-on-one, it could be $300 or $400 a month. But if you can do group coaching kind of stuff. But the tricky part is, what is the way that you are holding yourself accountable? And again, if you're doing that in a group setting, are people in the group also interested in the same kind of impact and the same kind of kingdom-minded growth and development that you are? Or is it more just general professional development goals? Is it general be a good Christian anywhere type goals? And so I'd have you think about, where are you getting accountability that's also relevant to your longer term purpose? Okay. So those are the 6 areas. Let me just hit them back again. The 6 traps. One is the alignment doubt trap. Number 2, the impact gap. Number 3, the community void gap. Number 4, the structured access or network ceiling. Number 5 is the professional development dilemma. And 6 is the accountability blind spot. Now, as you're hearing all those and kind of reflecting, I just shared as we were going some of my own experiences where I felt like I've been trapped in some of those. I'll say, loops and cycles where I'm not really getting much value, and that's why we call it scattershot development, right? You can go and play the field across tons of different groups and networks, but the problem is you're not going to have sustained growth and development and relationship outside of a place that's actually built to create a communal drive towards that destination. And so usually you've got to be in some kind of program that is going to where the outcomes of that program are going to form you into something that you want to be like. And so, like I said, there are some places and spaces to do that. There are some shorter term groups if you're an entrepreneur. There are some longer term groups if you're, a CEO, or if you're just like an employee at a big tech company, or big Fortune 500 company. There's some groups there with Faith and Work Global, the global movement. So there's a lot of options. I'll put a few of those in the show notes. But what I want to do with you here at the end is let you know part of what we do and what we're passionate about here on the Buried Talent podcast is connecting you. If these topics are interesting to you, don't do scattershot development for a whole nother year. Like, just jump into our free community and get some of that, get a taste of that. And maybe a taste of that within our community will help you find a community that will give you the things that you actually need to develop and grow, clarify your calling, grow professionally. And the end result is you'll be more faithful. You'll be able to execute at a higher level at your job. You probably, if you do professional development, you'll probably get a raise and you'll probably advance in your career. But you'll do that in a way that you're not just lining your own bank account, but you're asking these big questions of God, how am I building and developing your kingdom? How am I making your name famous in the marketplace and the workplace where I work? And so those are the things that we care a lot about. We have that community. We'll put the link in the community there as well. But let me just implore you, don't do another year of scattershot development. Like, your life, we don't know how much time we have here on the earth, and your life is only, again, it's only so long. And James says it's like a vapor. So it's like, oh Lord, let us use every day that we have, every breath that we have, every year that we have to develop ourselves into more faithfulness, saying yes to Jesus, doing so in community, and to try to find a community that is going to go in the same direction and push me to become more like Christ in my calling. So that's the episode for today. I'd love to keep you posted on some of the events coming up. We'll keep talking about that as we head into 2026. But thanks for joining us today on Buried Talent.